Welcome back to 33 Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Michael Aveney, and today I'm joined by Claudio. He's the founder of the Roofing Biz Broker, M&A advisor, and blue collar roofing industry. Claudio helps small to mid-sized roofing businesses owners sell to other companies. But today isn't about the deals, it's about the legacy. So, Claudio, welcome to the pod. And how are you doing today?
Thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure being with you, and I'm doing fantastic. I couldn't be better.
Okay. Well, I love that. Let's keep that going. When we first spoke, what struck me wasn't about the numbers that you do. It wasn't about the sales. It was about the way that you spoke about the entrepreneurs that you help, that risk they carry, that pressure that no one sees. And now at 60, hello, I could totally relate. And with a granddaughter and a little bit more perspective, it feels like that question has shifted, not from how big can I build, but what am I building this for? So let me start here with, what transformation are you currently in the middle of right now?
Well, just like you said, I'm really changing my view. As we get older, you start thinking more about legacy and what really are you doing in life. We have
Hmm.
just a few years in this life, only, 70, 80, hopefully 90, but there's not much more than that. And what do you leave behind when you're gone? So for me, it's starting to really weigh in all the decisions that I make. Is it not only am I making the right decisions for myself, but am I making the right path for my sons, my daughter, and my granddaughter, most of all? Mhm.
Yeah. What's her name? What's your granddaughter's
Oh,
name?
my son is Tomas, Ignacio, and Carolina are my three kids. And my granddaughter, her name is Pilar, and she's 1.5 years old.
Laura, I love that. Beautiful name.
Oh, I
Beautiful
love that
name.
name.
Me
Yes, it
too.
is. It is.
So as you're looking at this next chapter and you're in the middle of creating it, first of all, thank you for sharing your perspective. It's something that I've not had on the pod before. And as somebody who's turning
Mhm.
60 this year too, it's definitely that. I just had a conversation with my mom and family this week about, us moving forward as a family. It looks different now. It's definitely a shift of perspective, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like an ending anymore. It feels like a new beginning, and like looking at the stuff that I don't have to carry with me anymore. I'm sure you're going through
Yes.
similar spaces like
Same
that,
thing.
Yeah.
Same thing.
So
Absolutely.
my follow up to that is like, what does now contribution look like without losing the edge for you?
Well, I'm going to continue to do the same thing that I'm doing, but I'm doing it for a different purpose now. And we're going to talk later about my feelings about business owners and entrepreneurship. And I really want to do this to honor them. People have been working all their lives to build a company, and the last deal that you make right before you retire is to sell it, typically, right?
Hmm.
So I want to make sure I help them to sell for the best deal possible, but not only for them, for their employees. Think a company is a group of people that are there for a purpose, and when the owner leaves, he leaves behind the employees. And if he does it the right way, the employees have a great opportunity to make the company even bigger and better. And I always think about ripple effects. So you can help an individual do something. And like they typically say, you can teach a man how to fish. But in this case, if you teach a man how to manage a company or how to leave a company, the ripple effects are not going to be for him only. They're going to be for everybody that touches that company. So I see that as a huge responsibility and a huge opportunity to make a difference in some people's lives.
I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. It's like I get it. It's like it's a different animal, and there's just a real tendency, especially if you're in the digs with it
Mhm.
physically. There is like this connection or cord to it that is like attachment, and it sometimes clouds how we interact with the public or people, especially when it comes to selling it. So, like, I'm from your
Yes.
perspective, what do you feel like what from your perspective about entrepreneurs and your love for them and your care for them? What do you think is misunderstood most about them?
Well, you have the typical caricature or image of a business owner that they have the yacht and the airplane, and they're traveling around the world, and that's not true for 99% of them. 99% of business owners are people that are waking up every day, working a lot more than their employees most of the time, and when they go back home, they can't just put the telephone away because they don't know what's the next that they're going to have to put out. And
Hmm.
comparing, and I've been an employee for many years, so I'm not saying anything bad about employees. It's just that people don't understand the risks and the pressure that a business owner has. Because as an employee, if everything goes terribly wrong, you get fired or you get displaced, you can find another place to work. When you're a
Yeah.
business owner, when the business goes bad, you will do anything that in your power to keep that business up. And sometimes you put even your own house, your own personal savings, and your own family at risk just to save that business. And that's part of the entrepreneurship that people don't understand. It's easy to see the ones that were successful, but for everyone that's successful, there's a lot of them that don't make it, or they make it halfway through. Statistics are
Yeah.
really, really bad in that sense.
Yeah.
So when somebody actually is successful, and this is what I love about it, when you have a successful entrepreneur, it's not going to be himself the only one who's going to be benefited from it. It's going to be the employees that he has, the clients that he has, the suppliers that he has, the drivers that he has in the company. I mean, it's amazing the ripple effect that an entrepreneur that makes it actually has in society. The only actual generators of work are entrepreneurs. If you don't have entrepreneur, a worker
You don't
without
have
a
any.
capital
Yeah.
can't do anything. You need somebody
Yeah.
to put that money in.
Especially like the soloist of most enterprises. I never had a huge ecosystem around me. I mean, I had my family and stuff, but not that peer to peer because,
Hmm.
back in the day, everybody looked at everything as competition. So
Yes.
you kept everything close to the lid and you really didn't
Hmm.
share that, especially with your employees, which creates that loneliness and adds to that pressure. I think that's a really powerful thing for people that may be working for you. Like you said, most jobs are from entrepreneurs. And it's a good perspective to understand about we don't know what anybody's going through, but
Yeah.
especially because we do everything in the world. I mean, I'm speaking from experience. Like, I would
Yeah.
never let my employees know, like, even when I thought about selling my first business I had, those were like people that were in the digs with me for years.
Yes.
And it was
Yes.
just, I knew that switch went off in me that it was time to do something next, even though I didn't want to. I just like, it was just an impulse in me. And when I sold to actually people in my business, my top
Well,
producers there. Yeah. Yeah.
that's a great
My
way to.
assistant bought the business still. They kept the
Hmm.
name for a while, but then they transferred to where it was just the two of them and built their own business out of that, which they're still doing and still doing great. So that feels good. So I relate to you, especially because of when you do pass it on, you also passing on the legacy of all of those hard work at the beginning. My God, like the things that nobody sees, when they tell you it's twice as long. Well, nobody told me this, but I learned it takes twice as long as what you think it is. You don't like, it never occurred to me about the resistance that you get from the municipality that you happen to be in if you're in a physical business. And
Yes.
the delays and like all the cards are stacked against you when those delays is money that you didn't have planned for. Yeah, there's so much that happens that shifts on the outside. And I always had this tendency to isolate my employees from that experience so that they could just show up and do what they do.
Well,
Yeah.
many business owners, just like you said, and just like you're telling me, are very paternalistic and protective of their employees, contrary to what, again, the caricatures say and what people believe. I've never seen a business owner that wasn't worried about his employees and when he was selling the companies. Never. They've always think about, okay, so how are we going to leave them? How are they going to be after I sell the company? Is there any way we can compensate them? And there are many ways you can do that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's the mindset of an owner. So my shift, again, talking about shifting, the admiration I have for business owners hasn't shifted, but what has shifted is how I want to help them do that transition, and how do I try to, as much as I can, educate
Yeah.
them and be kind of like the psychologist for them, because they go through a lot when you're selling their business.
Yeah. And that, like the way things used to be. And then now, I
Mm,
work in the online space
mhm.
and it's its own set of different issues. But the
Yes,
thing that
yes.
I do here is like, especially from brand strategists that I work with as I'm developing my own brand, is, they get that I care. And I do.
Exactly.
And that's something that I learned, and it is an asset in the online space, and not to be afraid of like communicating that or letting that out, because it's not just, since we don't physically interact with them as much, through videos and things like that, but
Yeah.
it's like something that's important that's I'm missing that somebody's coming up and doesn't understand about physical businesses. If you're listening to this, care and like let that come through. It's like really, really
Yeah.
important, especially in the disconnected world that we live in. So
It's
go
funny
ahead.
because we're
Yeah.
much more connected in many ways and much more disconnected in many other ways, right? I
Yeah.
mean, look at us right now having this conversation via camera.
Hmm.
That connects us, but that at the same time alienates you because you're not physically there, right? So very interesting situation we're having with all social media and all that. Also very
Hmm.
interesting. I mean, of course, it's completely uncharted course, but when was it charted, right? So.
Exactly. And it opens things up, and I don't know where it came from, but like I guess just the repetitiveness of it. I've started to learn how to not be that barrier in my mind. Like when I'm talking to
Mhm.
somebody, like right now, like it's like as if you're here with me. And even on pre-calls when I connect, that's why nobody comes on my podcast unless I've had a conversation with them before
I think
and we've
that's smart.
connected in some way. That, and the process that I have to get here is
Mhm.
for that reason. And it's because that comes through in how people listen. And that's something I want to bring to the table. And even though it's there, but I also have visions of one day just taking, in fact, I'm going to make it happen. This season, I'm already in this is the eighth season that we're recording right now,
Wow.
and which will take us all the way to like mid-June once everything's completed. And but my next one, I'm gonna take some time off, and I'm going to get like I'm gonna be mobile, and
Hmm.
I'm gonna get my little Starlink. Yeah, I'm gonna figure out a way to like make that happen because I've like realized the pods is like really something that I'm just completely passionate about,
Yeah.
and I want to keep leveling it up. And it there's a connotation like when you first start that it's just something that people do, just talking. It's so much
Yeah.
more than that if you allow yourself to let go and use my, what life has given me and
Mhm.
share that with people. And like the pods that I listen to are, one of the most successful one in the world is Diary of a CEO. And I love him. I don't know if you've ever
Mhm.
listened to his pods, but they're really long format. But the way that he does them, Steve Barnett, I think is his name.
Yeah.
And the new one with Michelle Obama, like that one is, I'm like, yeah, there's value there. And the
Mhm.
feedback that I get from
Mhm.
emails and talking about taking on subjects like selling roofing businesses, but there's a human behind that that makes it interesting, and actually even more interesting when I have a subject matter that like that you don't your mind doesn't connect, like that would be something that I would want to chime into, but it's not
Mhm.
that. It's the
Yeah.
humans behind it. That's the value. And that's what attracted to me to like, yes, let's do this, because you were talking about when you're helping a client sell a business. There's something like what makes that exit honorable and with dignity beyond the actual, here's your money. There's
Yeah.
like, what gives you that insight to do what you're doing? Cause you have it like on, on
Well,
fleek.
yeah, it's beyond the financial transaction, if you will. Number one, the first thing I always try to do with all my clients is to really get to know them, just like you had this pre-conversation with me to get to know me better. I do the same with the clients. I get emotional sometimes when the stories come and when they tell me how they actually built the company and what struggles they went through and how they started, the typical American dream,
Yeah.
starting from nothing and ending up with a lot of money in the bank, fortunately, but also with something more than that, right? So every company at least has the soul, if you will, of the founder. The culture of the company is typically a reflection of who the founder is. And you see some companies that are very caring. Fortunately, I worked for a huge corporation, but a huge corporation that really had extremely good values, and that's Johnson and Johnson. I love it. I worked there for 20 some years, and one of the things that I love about J&J is that they have a credo, and that credo that I learned when I was 26 when I joined them. Really carried me through my whole life. And it's, to me, I was like the biggest example of how to do things right. Okay. Of course, J&J is a multi-billion dollar
Yeah.
company. Today it is. It was not that way when it started. It was two brothers when they started. And they went through the Civil War and they built a company. But in the 1940s, and I think this is important, if you give me 2 minutes to talk about this, because to me, it's really important. Robert Wood Johnson wrote what is called the Credo, and it's basically the set of values at which Johnson & Johnson operates. And that credo that I learned, like I said, when I first, of course, like every other employee, the first thing that they tell you is, what the company structure is and what the values are. So it's a very simple thing, actually, if you think about it. And it was written, like I said, in the 1940s when people were not so much aware of the environment and all that. But he was. And it's a 4-verse credo. And it starts, as it should, with the clients. And it talks about the mothers and the fathers that use the J&J products. It talks about the doctors, because J&J is not only things for babies. It's actually a very big pharmaceutical company. So the doctors and nurses that they use our products, and basically it says that we need to really take care of them. Now, the second part is about the employees and the people that work for J&J and the families of the people that work for J&J, how J&J needs to treat their employees to make sure that they are very well taken care of, which is great. Now, then you go to the third level, deeper level. It talks about the environment and the cities and the places where J&J works. And I could give you several examples of how they apply this, by the way.
Yeah. Dude, this is
But it
very
says,
interesting.
okay, I'll give you the examples. I'll finish with the credo, and then I'll go to the examples. So it says that we need to take care of the environment. Again, we're talking 1940s. Not many people were thinking about that at that time. J&J was. Robert Wood Johnson was. And the last part, which is the most interesting thing, is if we do this, if we do this for the clients, if we do this for employees, if we do this for the environment, the shareholders are going to have a fair share of their earnings. So it's not avoiding earnings. It says that it is, but it says that to get to them, you're not really chasing them. You're chasing serving the people that work with you, the people that use your products, and the people in the communities in which you live. So to me, it was just it's the perfect way to describe what a business does, right? You help people, and because you help people, you eventually get your revenue. Sorry, your profits, which is not bad as long as you're doing it for the right reason. And some ideas that I can tell you, for example, in J&J, we had a policy that if you look at something and it's legally okay, but ethically wrong, you still don't do it. And if it's ethically okay, but it's legally wrong, you still don't do it. So basically, it's a double way of measuring anything. So it can't be, even if it's legal, if it's not morally acceptable, you should not do it, which I thought it was great. When we put the offices in Argentina, for example, and I was part of the J&J company when they were putting offices in Argentina, which is where I'm from. Argentina didn't require, for example, sprinklers. Okay. And I remember that conversation as if it was today. So our CEO was talking with the people that were the facilities people, that they were installing this, and it was costing a fortune, but a fortune, because they were not usually used in Argentina, sprinklers. And The conversation was, well, this is the way J&J does it. It doesn't matter if Argentina doesn't require it. We require it because this is for the safety of our employees. Then when I worked at Ethicon in New Jersey, if you go to any J&J company anywhere, you will see they have a lot more land than actually buildings. So the buildings have to occupy a very small portion of the land that they have to preserve the land. So those are things that most people don't think a capitalist company does, but people or companies like J&J do it. And to me, it really marked the way, and I can tell you more stories, but they're more personal, how they took care of me when I needed it. And how, not because me, because they take care of their employees. So that's what I see as an example of how people should behave in a business. And that's what I see in small businesses all the time. That's when I see the small business owner that sometimes doesn't have money to pay his own rent, but he makes sure that he pays payroll, right? I try to learn as much as I can from my clients. And I can tell you the story of one of my clients who I sold his business. And he told me that he inherited the business from his dad, but he couldn't make it work for a few years. He had to actually close the doors because he didn't have the license to be a roofer. Eventually, he got the license. He opened the doors again. He called the employees again, and he started working with the company again. And the day that they actually made their first $1 million, they went to the cemetery and they did a celebration for his dad in the cemetery. So that to me was extremely, extremely emotional. And it shows that, when you have a heart and when you have a company that actually cares for their people, you're not only just making money, you're really changing lives.
Like I could see now, like how that you've mirrored that back to the community that you're serving now. You carry
Mm-hmm.
those exact same principles back to them at the same time. You're seeing it in them. It's a really interesting feedback loop that, like, when you're sharing the stories, because that's how we all communicate the most effectively. It's beyond any question anybody could ever ask you. It's like in the sharing of the stories really tells the intricacies of what it is and who you're up and what that's about. I'm interested though,
Exactly.
now that this is like shifting into the next chapter, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about shifting into 60 that is different than I've ever experienced. It's different than 50. I feel like this legacy to give back and to share my story about, how I not only saw the world, but like learned from it and adapted to it through all of the stuff that I went through. The changes now are different, but every stage of the game, I'm sure you had this too. It felt like the end of the world, back then. Now it seems like, oh God, this is really the end of the, but it's always like that.
Exactly.
I remember in church, like growing up, like when I was a kid, it was like, we're not going to make it very much long, it was always the end of the world. So
It's always the end of the world.
after
Yeah.
a while, it's like, yeah, and what are we going to do now? It's just like, it's always like leveling us to the next level. What has your life taught you about the next level that you're going to?
It's very hard to tell you how the lessons came. I really learned to begin the biggest lessons I learned is that it's never the end of the world. It feels like it, and then you can go through it. I will never forget one of the biggest lessons I had in life was just a few years ago when I left J&J and wanted to go on my own. I almost went broke. And my wife and I remember because she was sitting right next to me, exactly where I am, but to my left. And we were struggling and trying to pay our bills. The business that we first started didn't go that well. Actually did very bad. And there came a time when we said, and my wife, she's very, very optimistic. And she was always pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. And I wasn't that optimistic at that time. And I told her, you know what, we're going to have to declare bankruptcy. And I will never forget when she says, okay, let's do it. Let's declare bankruptcy. So she's been keeping me up all this, and I was really down. And when she went down, I went up. And I said, wait, no, let's do this one more time. Let's renegotiate what we need to negotiate. So basically, I stood up and we fortunately avoided bankruptcy and we got back on our feet. And now we're doing much, much better. But I learned a few things. First of all, that you need to have, if you're a couple, if you have a wife or a husband or a significant other, uh, you can complement each other tremendously. My wife and I, we've been for 27 years. We've been together and we've always been on the up and up, except at that time, right? So 27 years, let's say 20 some of those years were always, we had good jobs, we had great future, and there was really nothing that we thought was going to happen, but then it did happen. So I learned that
Yeah.
you can never, ever forecast the future. You never know when this is going to happen. Like, with COVID, for example, we can give another example. But
Yeah.
personal examples, that's one thing. I learned that you really being a couple means so much more than just, getting breakfast together or raising the kids. That's when
Yeah.
you really test your marriage or your partnership. So that's one thing that I learned, very hard lesson. And now I never take anything for granted, except for the fact that my wife and I are going to be able to pass any trial that we get on. So that's one thing.
Yeah. There's something about, I've had like probably three. There were always when I was going through a shift,
Hmm.
where the money got weird. And, like when you're in the flow and it's all flowing, you don't think about like when I did hair, oh my God, I never even give a thought about money. I just thought it was normal to have $200 or $300 in your pocket all the time because I would have
Yeah.
tips and I would never spend any of my, like, boy, when that went away, oh my God, at Christmas when nobody was, it was just like, what do you mean people are giving me? It was just this weird dichotomy that or experience that I went through, and then the next thing clicked, and it just keeps going. And then in this last phase, each one of those taught me a different lesson that I had not gotten before.
Yeah.
And this
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
one is like it's like the thing that I've actually they all have the same thing now that I'm thinking about it. It's the thing that I thought was going to cause money to flow was never the
Hmm.
thing. The original thought that I had was never the thing that actually did it. It was who I became during that, including this podcast. This was originally I wanted to meet people in this space and
Yeah.
and hear get feedback because I love solving problems. And
Yeah.
I knew that there was, the loneliness people experience, the disconnect, the confusion, everything that's happening in the world. But that's not what people pay for. And it's the context and the long haul. It's not a fix. It's
Yeah.
it's the relationships, the trust that you build and the community. That was the community piece. And that was something that I learned along the way that now has multiple applications that I'm so excited to explore and build. But it was and I am such a visionary. Like I think a lot of entrepreneurs are, they get that
Yeah.
vision and it comes to them and it's like it's like a Jesus moment, and it's like, this has come from on high. I have to do it exactly the way that it said, but it never really ended up being that way, so
One of the things that I love to think about all the time is, am I exactly in the place I thought I was going to be 5 years ago? And the answer is always no.
always. Yeah. It made
Always.
me stop
Sometimes it's
planning
better,
because it's
sometimes
like,
not. But
yeah, all of those, $25,000 weekend retreats I would go to like sketch out what it was going to be. I guess it did move you forward, but like at the end of the day, it was never the thing that they sold or said it was going to be. For me, it's ended up just being like you have to be present all of the time, or as much as
yes,
possible.
yes,
You have to be
yes,
present and actually just being present and keep it being present because there's
yes.
so many
Well,
distractions in life that it's so easy to get hooked by them. And now with like phones, like it's in things that you think is necessary, but it's like
no,
really be pay
they're not
attention to like
necessary.
the things that yeah, it's like it's the heart.
Well, I'll tell you another story about that. When I turned 50 years old, which is about exactly 10 years ago, I had a big party at my house, my 50 years party. And of course, they asked me to give a speech. And my speech was about living on purpose and purposely savoring every minute, purposely paying attention to your surrounding, purposely, you know, being in the moment, being there, because that's the only thing that's real, the moment. The past is the past and the future is the future. And if you don't let the moment pass, you end up, just drifting through life and not savoring. And you can savor the good times, but you can also take advantage of the bad times, right? You don't. One saying that I love is when you're going through hell, which I think
Yeah.
it's great. It's
So
a
you don't want to get
great.
stuck there.
You don't want to get stuck there. So if you're going
Yeah.
through hell, keep going.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I remember that speech as if it was today too. It's those things that you realize because you look back and you say, 50 years passed? Where are they? Right? My kids are grown.
Like
It's
that.
like, wow. And that's when you realize that your purpose in life is to help others and also not stop enjoying your life. Don't work. I mean, I love working, so to me it's not a big deal. I mean, I do wake up to your point earlier when you have that big idea. Those big ideas usually come to me at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I get up from my bed and come to my office. Fortunately, I work from home, so I don't have to drive. And I just sit here and start putting that idea together. And I don't feel it as a sacrifice because I like it,
Hmm.
right? One of the things
Hmm.
that happens when you're doing my job, my job is very, very up and down. It's black or white. 1 minute you're up, the other minute you're down, because to get to the closing table in a deal takes a lot of back and forth. And one of the things that I really enjoy, believe it or not, is when there's a problem. Because when there's a
Yeah.
problem, it actually sparks my, hey, how do I solve it? Right? I need to think differently. And sometimes you do, and sometimes you lose it. But for the most part, it's the excitement of finding things that, when people are crazy and you can come up with a better idea or something to solve the issue, that to me is just amazing.
Me too. I love it, especially if it and keep ruminating on it tonight. Get it like the simplest form and the clearest form. That
Mm-hmm.
we can almost go, yeah, like
Yeah.
release that out. Yeah. Um, I got a couple more questions, but I really want you to
Okay.
think about this one. Okay. What do you want Pilar to understand about her grandpa, about what he did in his career?
Wow. Just to think about it gets me emotional
Me too.
because I know that I really get emotional. My granddaughter is probably gonna remember me. Hopefully, if I live until she's in her or teens. But her kids are probably not even know who I am or who I was at that time. So it's not so much what I want her to remember me, is what values I could help her achieve, because that's what's important. Hopefully she will, and she will say that I was a great granddad, and I help her build. I'm building a house for her in the backyard, but I think it's more important to have her have as best values as possible, and she can enjoy life and be good to other people.
Yeah. Much. And it's like so complete. It just reminds
Hmm.
me powerfully about how to communicate in story form
Hmm.
even more than I do. Instead of like telling somebody, it's the story translated to so much easier and we get it as human beings. So thank you for sharing your story with me and our audience. I'm really going to, listening back to this is going to be a treat. So I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I really love being here. I liked it from the moment that we met, because this is not just another podcast where I talk about the typical things that I talk about. So it feels a lot more personal, a lot more intimate, and I hope people that listen to it get something out of it. That's all I can.
They will. They will. I hear back. They do.
Hmm.
It's just something that yeah, it is what it is. But yeah, thank you for sharing your legacy. And I just want to remind our listeners that maybe listening to this podcast sparks that question, no matter what stage of life that you're in, that be aware of that. And maybe legacy isn't something that you leave behind. Maybe it's something how you show up while you're building the thing that you're building. And maybe today is the day that you build a new conversation with yourself. And remember, there's no right way. It's just one conscious choice after the other. And with that, Pilar is in our hearts. Thank you for sharing that. And
Thank
thank
you.
you for being here with us. And we will see you guys on the next one. Great conversation today. Bye, guys.
Bye bye.